Hey everybody, it's time once again for our Wednesday Q&A. Answer some questions about the message each week and invite you to ask those, text those in, or share those on a piece of paper in our connection cards on Sundays. This week's question is about this interesting moment where Elijah meets God on the mountain, and God shows up to him in a special way. And the question is, why did God come to Elijah in a whisper instead of the wind, the earthquake, and the fire? The earth, the wind, and the fire. That's not the place they got their name from. But why did God choose to do this for Elijah? Well, I'd like to talk about this with you by going back to our text from this Sunday, and we will share that together. We'll dive into it just a little bit more here, and that is in 1 Kings 19, and that begins in verse 9. And right before we read, just to give you some context, if you remember, Elijah has just had a major victory over the prophets of Baal. He has outrun Ahab back to town, and now Jezebel's very upset and has threatened to kill him, as they have murdered many of the prophets before him. And so now he's on the run. He runs to the south and he goes to the mountain of God eventually. First, he takes a little rest and gets a snack and another rest and another snack. And then he makes his way to Mount Horeb. Most think that this is also just another name for Mount Sinai, where the Ten Commandments were given. It's a very special place. So that's where we pick things up. Verse 9. There he came to a cave and lodged in it, and behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah responded, "I have been very jealous for the Lord." He really wants to be near the Lord, the God of hosts. "For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." Elijah's pretty upset here, and he's conveying that to God. Interesting, because it seems like we had talked about that Elijah has had rest, and we would think he would be restored here, but there's an element of his rest that is missing. So what does God do? Now, this is before all of the earthquake and the fire and all these things. God comes to him and asks him this question. Based on apparently Elijah's response, God is now going to reveal himself to Elijah in a new, kind of more specific way. And so after Elijah says, "I got all these problems," God says to him, "Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord." And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord, and the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper, literally a still small voice. Maybe you've heard that phrase before. So Elijah hears the still small voice of the Lord, and he goes out. It says, when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in a cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him, the still small voice of the Lord. And that voice said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Same question. Same question he had already asked, but now in a still small voice. Why would God ask in this way? What's he communicating? Well, it seems that he's asking this question again because he's looking for a different response. Why are you really here, Elijah? And if I come to you in this tone, in this welcoming, "you are safe here" approach, would you answer more honestly? Elijah answers the exact same way. He said, I have been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Same thing. And this is interesting because Elijah is known as a man who goes before God. And he goes out with a cloak over his face, and he's reluctant, obviously, here. And some commentators even say it seems that Elijah doesn't actually want to really be before the Lord. And God is inviting him to do that because there's something missing in his rest. See, the invitation to Sabbath rest, to that rhythm, is not an invitation to rest. It's an invitation to Jesus. It's an invitation to God who gives rest, right? So we have to be careful with this. We can't just schedule rest. We need to schedule time with God in rest because he is the great provider. And yes, Elijah's had a good nap and he's had some snacks, but God's saying, you need to be with me in my presence. And so he says, hey, why are you here? And Elijah gives him this whiny answer and this upset answer. And he goes, hey, why are you here? You see what he's trying to do? I think he's trying to invite him into that personal place with God that he longs for with us. But Elijah is still upset. Well, God's going to continue to be patient with him, and he's going to answer his concerns with his plans. He says, go. The Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, you shall anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Saphat Abel Meholah, you shall anoint to be prophet in your place. So what's he doing? He says, I'm going to put guys in power who are going to be able to deal with the people and the situation that you are so concerned about. And I'm going to give you a friend and a mentee and a prophet to help with your work. See, Elijah, you've been telling me you feel so alone. You're so alone. I just feel so overwhelmed. Well, I'm going to help you deal with that. Just come into my presence. Tell me, reveal to me what the real issue is. I'm just lonely, God. I need you. I need to trust you. I think that's what, if I were guessing what God wanted to hear, I'd say it was something like that. Well, he's going to answer those issues. And then he tells them that whoever escapes these kings is not going to truly escape them, that God's going to deal with them harshly because God is judge and he's going to fix this situation. And then he says this, and this is the last verse I'll share with you, verse 18. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. What's he saying there? He says, Elijah, I know you feel alone, like you're the only one out here doing anything for the Lord, but there's 7,000 people that also are faithful to me. Elijah, you're not alone. God's got a plan. God's got a friend coming, and God has a remnant or a people who are faithful. Why does Elijah need a whisper? Because he needs a God who is present and quiet with him in a time when he needs that restful space. When God needs to be in the fire and the work, he will be. When we need him in the quiet and in the whisper, he will be, as we live in those rhythms. But the rhythm without the God of the rhythm, it's not going to provide rest and strength that we need, and purpose in the work and power in the rest. So that's why Elijah needed to hear a whisper. That's why I need to hear a whisper sometimes. But in order to do that, we need to run to the God of rest as we rest. I hope you do that this week in your intentional time set aside for rest with the Lord. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time.